All right, we are Facebook Live, called a special meeting, special call meeting of the Mayor and the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville to order. It's Friday, March 20th. It is now 3 p.m. And I will read the call for the special call, which is in accordance with the provisions of Section 21.321 of the Mississippi Code 1972 as amended. Mayor D. Linsford does hereby give notice of a special call meeting of the Mayor and the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville to be held in the courtroom of Starkville City Hall, 110 West Main Street on Friday, March 20th, 2020 at 3 p.m. Starkville, Mississippi 39759. Press and public are invited to attend or to view, via Facebook Live. In that limited space will be available due to social distancing, and we have certainly met that social distancing requirement. The specific subject of the meeting is as follows: the City of Starkville response to the pandemic of COVID-19. And so, as everyone knows, we took that matter up, declared a state of emergency in accordance with the declaration of the governor and the president, and in compliance with Oktibbeha County on Tuesday at our board meeting. And so this is a second opportunity for us to look at what we did on Tuesday, and I have a resolution, and this resolution should be in front of everyone, recommending that we further restrict. And before I say this, let me be the first to say and to acknowledge that most of our restaurants and our bars and our businesses in town have been extremely sensitive to the issues that we're all dealing with and that the nation is dealing with. And they have gone to takeout only or have been somewhat restrictive in allowing people into their establishments. But there are those who have not. And I think that at this point there are those who are waiting for us to do something in order to feel as though it's something that they can then ask their customers, their clientele, their customers who are coming in on a regular basis to do. So I think after having watched any number of escalations that are going on in other states, and not just in Mississippi, although Mississippi now has cases that we are seeing grow, I won't say exponentially because I'm not a mathematician, but grow pretty exponentially. I think it's incumbent on us to take steps before we find ourselves in Oktibbeha County going, why didn't we? And what steps should we have taken sooner? And so with that in mind, this resolution that our city attorney has drafted is reflective, actually, and I think he, again, borrowed it from Oxford and tailored it to us because actually Oxford didn't go quite as far as this one goes. So what I am seeking basically is not for me, but for the board, the mayor and the board. So I'm not asking for any special authority. I think that was one of the things that was in the Oxford ordinance. I'm not seeking that. This is a board and a mayor effort together, and the board speaks through its minutes and through what we do, and this resolution would be part of that. So what I'm asking for is essentially for us to ask, or us to mandate that all restaurants go down to takeout only, which again, most of them have, and that we restrict gatherings, social type gatherings, to 10 or less, and that's a CDC recommendation. So I didn't derive that from out of nowhere. That's what CDC is recommending, and they're doing it nationwide. So my request is that the board entertain this resolution as an opportunity for us to address something before we get to the point where we're going to be asked, why didn't you? And I do think we have reached that point. So I'm happy to read the resolution out loud so everybody can kind of get the effect of it, or we can just pass it out. Or Chris, do you want to add anything before I do that for the listening and viewing audience?
No, ma'am, I do think it might be helpful to read it. If somebody wants to read it, I could do that, or you could do that, or whomever.
Well, if you were
the
sitting
only other
here,
thing I would add to what you...
If you were sitting here, I'd probably let you read it. Since you're echoing a little bit, I'll be happy to read it. So I will proceed to do that.
Okay.
And then we can have dialogue.
The only other thing, I'm sorry, Mayor, I keep interrupting. The only other thing I would add is you use the phrase social gatherings. Section 2 is broader than that as it's currently written.
I'm sorry.
Section
okay.
2 includes businesses and places of worship. So if it's the intent not to include businesses, then that needs to be stricken.
Okay, it was my bad. It was just a term of art that I had been kind of using all along. So I'll read it, and then we'll see where the board wants to go.
I'm going to ask that question maybe before.
Okay.
You're saying Section 3 is to include businesses or not to include businesses and places of worship?
Section 2.
2.
Section
And then
2.
also, you'll speak to the curfew, or this would not,
No, this is not implementing a curfew.
I know, I was gonna say, speak to that, this is not implementing a curfew.
Correct.
And anytime a curfew were to be enacted, it would take further action in another meeting of the Board of Aldermen.
Are
and
you
Mayors.
only comfortable with that language?
That's correct.
Well, my question in reading this was, when it, you know, strong language of curfew, is that it could not be enacted under any circumstance without another meeting of the mayor and board, correct?
This is
Absolutely.
future action of.
Absolutely. I'm not willing to impose a curfew without board action.
Yeah, I'm just making sure it can't happen without board action.
All right, so let me read it, and then
Okay.
we'll do that, and I'll try to be fairly quick about it. So, resolution of the mayor of the board of the city of Board of Aldermen of the city of Starkville, Mississippi, declaring a civil emergency and for the control of contagious and infectious diseases and related purposes. Whereas on March 14th, 2020, pursuant to the Constitution of the State of Mississippi and Mississippi Code annotated 3315-11 sub B sub 17, Governor Tate Reeves declared a state of emergency existed in the state of Mississippi as a result of the outbreak of COVID-19. And whereas on January 31st, 2020, the United States Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar declared a public health emergency for COVID-19 beginning on January 27th, 2020. On March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization characterized COVID-19 as a pandemic, and on March the 13th, 2020, the President of the United States declared a nationwide state of emergency due to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas on March 17th, 2020, the city of Starkville, through its mayor and board of aldermen, adopted a proclamation of existence of local emergency due to the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas the emergence and risk of spread of COVID-19 within Mississippi constitutes a public emergency that has resulted in substantial harm, injury, or harm to life, health, and property within Mississippi and in the city of Starkville, and COVID-19 has already been detected in numerous individuals in multiple counties throughout the state. And whereas on March 11th, 2020, the Mississippi State Department of Health confirmed the first presumptive case of COVID-19 in Mississippi, and as of March 20th, 2020, there are at least 80 cases in Mississippi that have tested positive for COVID-19, resulting in at least one death. And whereas the state of Mississippi and the city of Starkville is being adversely affected by the outbreak of the novel coronavirus COVID-19, and there exists a continued threat to the public safety, private property, and social and economic welfare to the state. And whereas the Centers for Disease Control guidelines for responding to COVID-19 recommends avoiding crowds or gatherings of more than 10 people, especially for older adults and individuals with serious chronic medical conditions. And whereas the governmental authority of the city of Starkville has reviewed and accepts the findings and recommendations of the CDC. And whereas the city of Starkville as a college town is densely populated and contains significant populations of both older, at-risk individuals in the city's large retirement community and the younger individuals who travel broadly and frequently. And whereas Mississippi Code annotated 4517.3 allows the city of Starkville to proclaim a civil emergency if it determines that a natural disaster which has caused death or injury has occurred. And whereas the city finds COVID-19 a natural disaster which has caused and will continue to cause injury to persons to such extent that extraordinary measures must be taken to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of citizens and visitors to Starkville and Oktibbeha County. And whereas Mississippi Code annotated 4517.5 allows the city of Starkville to order a general curfew as deemed necessary in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare of citizens and visitors to Starkville and Oktibbeha County, Mississippi. And whereas Mississippi Code annotated 4517.7 allows the city of Starkville, after declaration of a civil emergency and in the interest of the public safety and welfare, to issue such orders as are necessary for the protection of life of citizens and visitors to Starkville and Oktibbeha County, Mississippi. And whereas Mississippi Code annotated 2119.3 allows the city of Starkville to make regulations to prevent the introduction and spread of contagious or infectious diseases, to make quarantine for this purpose, and to enforce same within 5 miles of the corporate limits. And whereas Mississippi Code annotated 2119.17 allows the city of Starkville to restrict movement for public safety and allows the city of Starkville the power to make such regulation to protect health and lives and to enhance the general welfare of the community by restricting such movements of its citizens or any group thereof when there is imminent danger to public safety because of freedom of movement thereof. And whereas Mississippi Code 2119.29 allows the city of Starkville to regulate the entrances to public halls and buildings and the way of ingress and egress to and from the same. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and the board of aldermen of the city of Starkville that the city of Starkville hereby adopts the following emergency measures that shall take effect immediately and remain in effect until rescinded by the governmental authority of the city of Starkville unless a different effective date is stated in such measures: to protect the public health and safety and welfare of the community from the spread of contagious or infectious disease and to eliminate or limit injuries or deaths that may occur in the absence of such measures. Section 1, effective immediately and for a period of 30 days unless extended, motion and order of the governing authority of the City of Starkville. All restaurants shall only serve food using drive-through, curbside-only pickup or delivery methods, and shall not allow the use by the public of interior or exterior common dining or bar facilities. Section 2, effective immediately and for a period of 30 days unless extended by motion and order of the governing authority for the City of Starkville, the businesses, clubs, organizations, places of worship, or other gatherings within the city boundaries shall adhere to the guidelines of the Centers for Disease Control to limit crowds or gatherings to no more than 10 people with the exclusion of essential services, including but not limited to hospitals, nursing homes, health clinics, drugstores, pharmacies, banks, grocery stores, convenience stores, and gas stations. Section 3, the city, through future action of the mayor and board of aldermen, may order a general curfew or shelter in place applicable to such geographical areas of the municipality or to the municipality as a whole, as advisable and applicable during hours of the day or night as necessary in the interest of public safety and welfare, with such curfew only to remain in effect for a period not to exceed 5 days or an earlier date of rescission as may be ordered by the mayor and board of aldermen. Section 4, the city may issue such other orders as are necessary for the protection of life and liberty, and with the remaining paragraph to be reflective of who made the motion, how it was seconded, and how the vote was read. So I'll let it go with that. So there's the
Move approval.
Jason, that was you?
That was me.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, do I have a second?
Hold on, just a
Well, we
second.
need a second to
Okay.
discuss it.
I'll second.
All right, I have a
Second.
motion from Alderman Walker and a second from Alderman Beatty. Discussion.
All right, I'm gonna pose this, and this goes a little bit to what Ben was talking about a little bit about this, about the city coming, let's just say that things got bad quickly, and we had to move quickly to get a 5-day curfew in place. And this doesn't happen now, it happens in July, and I don't know. I mean, this is worst case scenario, but then again, we don't have layers of government here like the state and federal government does. In other words, the president goes down as a vice president, the governor goes down as we have a vice mayor, but we do. So we got a backup there. But I mean, do we need to consider giving the mayor the authority to place a curfew if it got bad enough? We sick and we can't meet, and we can't be reassembled because there's no fault, there's no associate board, and 4 of us are sick or something like that. I mean, and this doesn't happen. It's not going to happen now, but it happens in July or August when this thing is maybe. Hopefully, it's not in full deal, but it were.
Well, I would suggest as it escalates, assuming if it escalates, I didn't say as, if it escalates and we get to the point where we feel we need to do that, we can certainly revisit it. And I don't think we're there right now. I mean, I don't see any of us just, falling out in the next 5 days. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest that we certainly will be revisiting it if this continues to go along. So I don't see that we need to do that right now.
And the other thing I would say about that is that there are cities in Mississippi, some of them are no larger than us right now, that have mayor council forms of government, that are strong mayor forms of government, where that mayor already has the authority to do that. Where our mayors are weak, our form of government, co-charters are weak mayor form of government, where we don't, that power's not, authority's not, day-to-day authority's not vested in our mayor. And I just wondered, these are extraordinary times, and I wondered, would we need to extend that to our mayor if she needed to act quickly and to do that if the situation arose.
I understand. And if that happens, we can certainly see it coming our way, I think. Alderman Carver, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't ever want to change the code or the form of government within this term, even with this. I think technologically, we're so privileged to be able to, if no one ever wanted to meet, essentially, I guess we could all meet by telephone.
I think he's assuming we may all be on respirators.
Right.
Maybe, but
Well,
I'm not,
and I understand,
but
and that's a valid concern. You got to play worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean,
and but it's just some things I want to pull out of this that I just kind of I want to throw this out there for public discussion. Is like places of worship. I know at our church and other churches are already talking about. We're going to back up even further and say, isolation in any situation and any person. They've proven that in prison systems and everything else is one of the worst things you can have on humans. So I think people are still. You're going to see neighbors trying to reach out to neighbors. Everybody's trying to. Humans want to associate with other humans. So some places of worship, like are talking about maybe worshiping in cars, kind of like where my wife's from, and Iuka, Mississippi still has a drive-in movie theater. You can turn up, pull to a certain radio station, stay in your car, never have contact with another human, but still congregate. Would this apply to that hypothetical situation?
Not, if, the answer for me is no, because you're in a confined space.
Yes.
So you're not, you're not all collected together, and that would allow for that distance to occur. So I would say no.
Secondly, just thinking out loud here, and I know everybody is fielding scenarios and questions all day, every day on every kind of worst case scenario you can think of and imagine. But restaurants, as far as that have open bars, open patios, and they're not less than 10 people, unless we pass this tonight, what is that? How is that? They're socially distanced. I'm just thinking of patios in an open air environment that probably less infectious than they would be going to the grocery store or that's just, I'm thinking out loud.
No, I understand, and one of the things I did last night was I cruised the streets. And for example, Bulldog Burger, they have that nice open patio, and there are a number of people out there, but there are also people inside. And even though they do have a patio, the distance element of that still creates, and you've got servers coming in to serve on a regular basis. So it just in the sense of constantly serving them drinks or serving them food or whatever. So it's I think it's a little different than taking a package out to somebody and leaving it and they get it. So
that's great answers. And then the last thing is just this curfew. I'm going to go ahead and say publicly that I would probably never support it, just because we have a lot of individuals.
Never say
Yeah.
Doing that?
never. Never say never.
Well, I just think there's too many people that the way that this virus is that it's people are going to still live within they're still going to live their life. You're not a total isolation quarantine. I had about 7 or 8 years of pandemic influenza experience with Homeland Security and Mississippi State University Extension, so I remember all the, we had to play worst case scenario, and I think, this is not something that's over in 30 days. I think it's a longevity of 30, 60, 90 days to 18 months. We've seen all the things online that people will still have to have continuity of operation and still go to work, and so, right now, I'm timid on the curfew idea because there's too many people that work night shifts and things that happen at night. That doesn't mean that just because you're out at night, you're doing bad things. Now, as we saw in Hurricane Katrina and other situations, if looting or rioting or anything like that were to occur, I think then that's when you have to step up quickly, and it would take from what I understand, a full board meeting and an action to get that vote.
What?
And then no, I was going to say that, and then I think one of the biggest things you have to do is if a man or woman gets hungry, then that in everything I went through with my training is when irrational decisions get made, and I think it just continue to know that Starkville is providing meals for people through and every day it's I'm amazed at more and more groups that are providing meals for the general public, so you shouldn't ever really miss a meal in Starkville, Mississippi. Through this, I think we have a great advantage with a town and gown and a great public school system that's stepping up, and private businesses that are stepping up, that people ought to understand, the general public ought to understand that for the foreseeable future, there is food getting provided. So just want to make that public comment.
okay, I appreciate it. And let me say to you, I met with pastors this morning. I met with a group of 5 who were, I mentioned this to them, and they were all understanding and said that they had been trying to distance themselves and their congregations as well. And one of the things we talked about, just so I can put it out there, is a hotline, a phone line. And I had asked Kristen Campanella if that's something that she could do, and she was working on it, but it was kind of tough slogging for her. And so I called Joel up, and our IT department, we can dedicate a single city line as a hotline, and so we're gonna do that. And all I'm waiting on now is, and the pastors are gonna get back with me about how to do it. But basically, we're going to take the city line and put it out there as a phone, as an opportunity to call in, and it will be manned by a rotating group of churches who are going to take it on a either daily or maybe every other day basis, or not daily in some cases. They may decide to do 2 days in a row for one church and 2 days in a row for another church. But we're going to allow our phone number to be used for that purpose, and I thought that was a really good use of our phone system if we can do that. So Joel says we can. So I told him just give me a number, and when they get ready to do that, we'll move forward with it. So at least in that regard, we'll be able to do that. Alderman Little, I see your hand.
done.
You were done,
What
weren't you?
was
I'm
the
sorry.
30th? This is a 30-day.
30 days.
What was that final date?
Oh, gosh.
The 20th?
Okay.
The 19th.
Chris,
19th or 20th.
did you calculate that? 19th? Should be the 19th.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it'll be after our next board meeting, and after even our second board, but we'll take it up at the next board meeting to evaluate it.
Well, that was my question as well. Should we set the date of the next board meeting, or I guess hopefully, in a perfect world, everything will be.
And we can
but I don't know
rescind
that it will, and we
Yeah,
can
we
rescind
can
it, I guess.
absolutely
at the next
rescind it at
meeting.
the next board meeting if that were the case. If
Um,
not, it keeps us from having to act every,
And next, from an enforcement standpoint, Chief, say if this passes this afternoon, goes into effect immediately, or is someone going to go to these restaurants that aren't closed and say, you've got to be closed?
well, they don't have to be closed, they just have to do takeout.
Well, takeout, but, or convert,
Yes.
make the conversion. rather.
Yes. And I have already contacted a number of them who, it will be the folks who
The
are the
bars will
chains.
close, I guess.
Yes, it'd be the chains, Applebee's and those folks who are not part of that local group, we'll be sure we go to them. So Chief, I assume that you can staff up to do that, or I can go out and do that, for example.
No, the Starkville Police Department is prepared, and under the inactions, we're labeling pandemic response. We're bringing in personnel for anything related to helping stem this pandemic, and so we're prepared and we're ready. We'll start with the enforcement of a warning and education, and then a warning with an order to disperse, and then from there we'll take the actions of arrest or citation. But we do anticipate community cooperation, which has been so far outstanding from the citizens of Starkville.
Agree, and we'll have a copy of the resolution available to them, so, okay, all right.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right,
I got
you bet.
one question.
Let me go down to this, there we go, Alderman
No,
Ross.
but, okay, just say, you say a sanctuary hold anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people. Okay, you say 6 feet, but you say, okay, but 10 people's come in with a sanctuary that large?
Well, that's about the only way I know for us to do that. If we do it on a square footage basis, I don't know how we do that.
That's what I
Alderman Vaughn.
wonder, why they wouldn't do it on a square foot of basis, that's what
And that's my problem. I don't know how you do that. If it's, greater than 10,000 square feet or greater than, I don't know how you do that and separate that out. So that was the complexity of that. Yeah, I didn't have a good way to go about that, to be perfectly honest.
Would that be 10 people with the pastor and the deacons and the board and
Well,
just
it'd be
10
like-
individuals like we are?
Yeah, I would be inclined to say that you've got your body. who's
Your
doing-
body,
Yeah,
right.
it would be then that would be a separate and distinct group. So, Chris, I hear you making noise over there. Is that you? Nope.
Not me, Mayor.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. All right, I saw it. Let me be down at this end. Alderman Vaughn, were you
Yeah, see,
saying-
because the reason I said that because we have 10 out there, but it's 10 of us up here.
Right.
And so,
Right.
I just want to get some clarity on that.
Sure, absolutely. Alderman Beatty, did you have,
Just somebody on the other side.
well, I think Alderman Sistrunk wanted to say something.
Go, I'll defer.
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment to Alderman Walker's motion to strike Section 3, since it's going to take future action anyway, and it does seem to confuse people when you begin to talk about a curfew, even though this falls into the category of just a warning that that's an option that's available to us. Why don't we strike that for now? So I move that we strike Section 3 as a
Okay,
friendly
well,
amendment.
Well, let me ask you a question. If we do that, we'd have to come back with another resolution, will we not, Chris?
You would.
May I make the following?
Okay, I would need a second to her friendly,
But you've got a motion second on the first thing,
I
this
do.
is an amendment to.
this is an amendment to, and I need it,
And may I ask, what would having to have another resolution do? I'm assuming one would cut and paste this and just bring Section 3 back as a
well,
standalone.
you probably would, but it's just a matter of having to go through that process again.
But
so-
we're going to have to get together anyway.
Well, we would. We wouldn't have to do a resolution. We'd just get together and make a decision, but, whatever.
But we're looking, and there again, we're gonna meet between now and time this thing could be amended or that kind of stuff, but the state of New York, a week ago, that was just, it was just broad general talk about
Right.
shelter in place, and the state of California, both those big states now have shelter in place. I don't guess they call it curfew, but shelter in place. What if you struck the word curfew and just left a general shelter in place applicable? That's the, you go to the grocery store, you go to the pharmacy, you go to the gas station, you go to the bank, and you pick up some takeout food and you go home. It's just not just general. I mean, there is.
Well, the only thing, and Chris, you can weigh in on this. The only thing I would say to that is that shelter in place is not a recognized language other than most recently. Usually, it's used with active shooter drills. Curfew is something that is in statutory language. Am I incorrect about that, Chris?
No, that's exactly why curfew is listed, and I just added that shelter-in-place language in there just because that's being talked about in relation to COVID-19. But curfew is,
Did we lose you, or were you done?
and the only benefit, the only benefit I see with Section 3 being in this resolution is it does give a clear marker or a shot across the bow that the city is very serious about this and might revisit that issue the next time around if people don't adhere to what's already being implemented in Sections 1 and 2.
Yes, and that's why I like Section 3 being in there. I can go where people want to go, but I think that's the value of Section 3 being in there.
What if you added language that it order a general curfew or shelter in place of the general population with the exception of those involved in the delivery of essential goods and services? And that way, people, the plumbers, the people delivering food, crop, that kind of general that kind of stuff continues. It's just people not out milling around, unless they've got a reason to be out.
Okay.
I think we're putting the cart behind the horse. If we're gonna leave it in there, leave it in there. We gotta come back again.
I mean, but
We do.
if a curfew means that the Cisco truck can't drive into town and deliver something to something like that, that's not what you want. You want the grocery store to still be stocked. You just don't want people out generally moving around town unless they've got a reason to be out. If you came to that, it came to.
Well, we excluded the essential services, which listed hospitals, nursing homes, et cetera, health clinics, et cetera, up in paragraph 2.
But would it extend to stuff we don't need like food and.
Yeah, banks, grocery stores, convenience stores, those are all.
Okay.
Those
All
are
right.
all.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, anything further? Alderman Carter?
I was just going to say before the vote again, the places, I guess, business is still open for 10 people or less. Everything's open in town, except for, but not limited to, hospitals, nursing homes, health clinics, drugstores of any kind, pharmacies. Banks are fully open for 10 people or less. Grocery stores, any capacity. Grocery stores can be anything. Convenience stores can be over 10 individuals if that. I think people use their common sense and not crowd, and then gas stations. So just want to let people know, I know that the hype and hysteria and people miss this vote.
And I'm sure we have, the press will be out there, they'll say it. But we actually, Ms. Sistrunk, I regret I did not get a second to your friendly amendment.
Drop it.
Okay, so you want to eliminate, okay, all right, so she removed the friendly amendment. All right.
May I ask?
Yes, ma'am.
The city attorney one last question. Generally, when we are, well, let me first say that when we read Section 2, it says businesses, clubs, organizations, places of worship, or other gatherings, which would cover groups at the park and that sort of thing. But businesses will include anything from Garin to Mr. Perkins' office to Watkins Ward and Stafford to Starkville Daily News, which has already closed its doors to the public. So just be aware there, and just be aware there. And at that point, I'd like to ask the city attorney, as we frequently do, if we pass this, how comfortable are you that this is defensible in court, particularly with there being potential freedom of assembly or freedom of speech issues? And I know these are extraordinary times.
Yes, ma'am. I think Section 2 is a close call because on the one hand, you've got the broad police powers under the civil emergency statute and health, safety, and welfare statutes that the mayor read in the preamble of this resolution. but those scrub against those general individual constitutional liberties under the First Amendment of freedom of assembly and freedom of worship. And if someone were to bring a constitutional challenge against Section 2, I can't guarantee how that would shake out. My best judgment today, given the severity of the COVID-19 crisis, and given that the law tilts in favor of a presumption of reasonableness for city actions in these types of dire circumstances, my best judgment is the city would most likely prevail. But again, I think it's really close and couldn't guarantee that outcome.
Counselor, could you?
But I have no problems with 1 or 3 if the city ultimately had to enact that. If there was proof that 3 was warranted, we're not there yet. But 1, I think, is clean legally.
If we were challenged in 2, could we not just immediately back away from it, cease and desist or whatever, and if we thought we were about to be challenged in something that we could lose in a legal case?
You could, Alderman Beatty, and the only blowback from that is you might have to pay the fees of what it took to get the lawsuit to that point, but there wouldn't be any type of damages tacked on top of that.
Okay. Anything? Alderman Sister.
And I have one final thing I'd like to say. This is the very definition of a fluid situation. We get information not just by the hour, but by the minute as to how things are changing. Different groups are stepping in and enacting different regulations. I feel sure that before this really cools off much, that the governor will enact a completely separate rule that controls the state of Mississippi. I don't think any of us here take this lightly, because we know that when we do this, we are impacting individuals' wages, their jobs, their well-being. We recognize the potential damage that's going to come to the business community by doing this. And this is as somber a vote as I believe this board certainly has taken in terms of its impact on our city. Wash your hands, socially distance, do all those good things to keep yourselves safe, but these are extraordinary times. I'm not fond of this. I'm going to go ahead and say that up front. I'm not fond of it on a lot of levels. I probably will vote yes. I'd like to be the last one to vote, if you don't mind, Ms. Harden. I probably will vote yes, because if it's not unanimous, it's not immediately effective.
Well, the only thing we're voting on right now is a proclamation.
Right.
The ordinance will come next.
Would come separately, yeah.
And that's the thing that will not be effective immediately. So.
And,
Request a roll call vote. I'm sorry.
and I also say that this sort of thing, if we enact it and we don't enforce it, we have wasted our time and put the community through stresses that were not necessary.
Maybe one other thing. I just don't want us to look back. We've had the opportunity to enact something that we felt like was in the safety, the best interest of, and the welfare and the interest of our citizens, and didn't do it. And this is tough, and it's not fun. And other stuff we're doing now is pleasant, or anything like that. It's bad. It's not good stuff. At the same time, it's something that Alderman Sistrom said, we're in extraordinary times, and we've never faced anything like this before, and that's.
We have not, and it's heartbreaking. Alderman Vaughn.
We're not doing no more than other municipalities and other states doing. We're not doing no more than they're doing, are we?
Well,
About the same thing that most everybody is doing.
Yes, sir. I don't think anyone in the state of Mississippi has done this yet, but there are other states where they are going to even greater extremes than this.
That's what I know.
Yes, that's accurate. And this is truly a heartbreaking set of circumstances.
I know it's heartbreaking. It hurt me because,
Yeah.
you can't have a full congregation when you used to go to church and have a full congregation.
Sure.
That's the biggest thing that hurt me. Whether you look on one side of the coin, you look, well, I'm used to going to church. Now I can't go to church on the flip side of the coin. Do I want to go to church for my safety? Even though I know God got my control, I know God over my life. It's two sides of the coin. But you got to look at the side of the coin where you say obedience is better than sacrifice, and then we got to obey the laws of the land. So if these laws of the land that coming from this board, this is what we got to go with. And God knows that. So it's two sides of the coin.
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that this is, as Ms. Sistrunk said, as Alderman Sistrunk said, this is as somber a vote and as somber a topic as we've ever had to take up. So, Alderman Carter.
Just still thinking just openly, obviously you want to protect your elderly, and then I'm thinking of community counseling service. I know that they have a congregation daily gathering. Mr. Turner's an individual I think of that's in a group of individuals that are 65 and older for most part. Has anything been addressed with community counseling, daycare services that are provided to our elderly? How does that fall into this?
Unless it falls into the exception as a medical facility.
Well, daycares.
Daycares would not, but
Yeah,
community
but
counseling might.
I'm sorry, what was the phraseology here? Nursing homes, that was the nursing homes aspect.
Does that qualify as a nursing home?
No,
They can still-
not as a nursing home, no, because they can come and go. And the only times I've been to community counseling, they didn't have 10, but they had, 7 or 8, so I understand the concern, but they have more than one space. I mean, they can divide them up as an option, choose different.
I'm just
different
thinking of that
rooms.
risk,
Yeah, sure.
citizens that we have in Starkville.
Yep.
I'm thinking 65 and older in congregated areas, and that's one that I think of. I think of nursing homes. I don't know how further you can separate, but that's permanent residents. I know community counseling brings them every day together, in much larger groups than 10, but there's other instances in town, churches, places of worship, obviously are addressed, but I'm going to ask that the roll call start on that way for one time.
Okay, that's
You
not a
wanna vote
problem.
last, I'll vote before you.
Apparently, Alderman Sister wants to be last, so I understand. All right, any further discussion before we go for a roll call? And we would have to do one anyway.
Mayor, may I be recognized on one point?
Mr. Latimer, you may.
I just wanted to tag what I said in response to Alderman Sistrunk's question, because I've talked about this individually to some of you, but I wanted the full board to be able to hear it. The only way to take off the legal risk, in my opinion, to Section 2 is to make it a strong recommendation rather than a mandate. But the flip side of that is, if you make it a recommendation, then perhaps it's not adhered to this weekend, and then perhaps you're dealing with additional COVID-19 cases and maybe even death because it wasn't a mandate. So that's kind of the decision that you have. You can eliminate the legal risk, but then people may not adhere to the practice. And that's the policy decision that's in your court.
Right, okay. All right, been stated. All right, roll call vote, if you would, please answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name, starting with Alderman Vaughn.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Beatty.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Yay.
Alderman Sistrunk.
She wants to be live.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry,
Alderman Carver.
Yeah.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Yay.
Okay. It's unanimous by a vote of 7-0, the motion carries. Next item to take up is the ordinance, which is amending Chapter 1 Code of Ordinances of the City of Starkville, Mississippi, General Provisions. And this is in essence creating penalties, general penalties for the violations associated with the resolutions related to emergencies. I'll read this one too, it's very short, so. New subsection C to read, C, anytime the mayor or board of aldermen shall make any resolution, rule, order, or regulation to prevent the introduction and spread of contagious or infectious diseases, to prevent or alleviate imminent danger to the public safety because of freedom of movement of the city's residents, to regulate the entrances and the way of ingress and egress to and from buildings, in furtherance of a proclamation or declaration of a local or civil emergency, or as otherwise necessary for emergency management purposes, any such rule, order, or regulation shall have the full force and effect of law once recorded in the office of the city clerk. The violation of any such rule, order, or regulation shall be punished by a fine not exceeding $1,000 or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 90 days, and the cost of prosecution or by both such fine and imprisonment in the discretion of the municipal judge, except as provided otherwise by state law. Each day, any violation of any such resolution, rule, order, or regulation shall constitute a separate offense. There's a repealing clause. All ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith shall be and the same are hereby repealed. Effective date, the mayor and board of aldermen find this ordinance is adopted for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, and safety of the residents of the city of Starkville. For the reasons set forth in the resolution declaring a civil emergency adopted at their specially called meeting on March the 20th, 2020, the mayor and board of aldermen further find that this ordinance would be effective immediately upon its adoption by unanimous vote of the board of aldermen. Above ordinance having been first reduced to writing and read and considered section by section at a public meeting of the governing authorities of the city of Starkville on motion of, in which case then we will get the vote that goes with it, and it will be designated as such. So That is the next item to take up. And so do I have a motion to adopt the ordinance? Chapter 1, Code of Ordinances. of the
Move
City-
approval.
Second.
Motion from Alderman Walker, a second from Alderman Sistrum. Further discussion.
So this is gonna throw $1,000
Yep.
fine and 90 days imprisonment if
Well,
somebody,
or, it would be 90 days.
up to $1,000 or a term not exceeding 90 days
Yes.
and prosecution costs if
Yes.
someone congregates with more than 11 people.
This says we're serious about what you
Yes,
voted on
it
earlier.
does.
Yeah, and it's gonna take a unanimous vote by the Board of Aldermen.
It is.
Or it
In
to
order,
be
no,
immediately
In
effective.
order to make it effective immediately.
Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
Do what?
I said if other 30 days from that, doesn't matter.
Well,
It will be in effect in 30 days.
yeah, it won't be in effect until 30 days. So we will have issued our resolution, but anything associated with the enforcement would be either immediately or 30 days hence.
And this would be a grand time for Chief Ballard to come back and make his comments again about how the enforcement will occur. I think it will allay some of Alderman Carver's concerns.
Yes, ma'am. For every law, with all the well-represented attorneys on the board, there's the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. And our department recognizes the moment that we're in. This is about the spirit of the law, meaning the purpose is to educate. Enforcement action would be a very late after the third, fourth, fifth, sixth warning. And even then, we would foresee like a citation or a summons type of situation. And it would have to be pretty, we're going to study the ordinance, but it's not one that we're, a police officer on every corner injecting panic into the atmosphere. But if you've got, let's say, what I think at the heart of this is, if you've got a nightclub owner that has got a large party taking advantage of Mississippi State campus being closed out and is drawing in alcohol sales where people's decision-making is not where it needs to be, then that's something that we would perceive as a core component or the heart of this type of ordinance. We would be highly respectful for all the multiple religions that make up this community and other aspects, and that's one where we would go to, whether it's the imam, the preacher, the priest, and speak to them in those regards, and probably would keep, depending on where it's at, each of the board members advised of that. We recognize the sensitivity of this.
So, and the newness of it. I mean, this will be something that we enact on a Friday, and so as such, we will need to make sure that we communicate with folks as best we can, and there are lots of them to do that with, so we may miss some, but that doesn't mean we can't be understanding about that communication.
That's correct, ma'am.
And while I appreciate very much the idea that we are going to educate and that we are going to use a warning process, that sort of thing, if it takes you more than one, maybe two of those warnings, I think you've crossed a line there, so.
Well, I feel sure the folks will disperse with men in blue, so, Alderman Carver.
Well, that they don't reverse.
Yeah.
I'll tell you all honestly how I feel. I mean, after a second warning, can somebody be arrested without this being passed? I mean, if they're breaking what we just declared in our previous vote, can y'all arrest? Hey, y'all are, how do you disperse a crowd of 20 that won't go? It's people hanging out, having a party in the front yard, and tell them that's not, we're in a 30-day,
Well-
how do you adjust that without this?
In the front yard, we don't have, this is not authority for the front yard.
Okay, they're having a congregation of their house and having a barbecue and a cooking, and there's 25 people in the house. Can you adjust that within people's homes?
Chris, you can speak to that, but I don't think we're talking about homes. We're talking about businesses and establishments that are open to the public in such a way that we can control that. Chris, you want to weigh in there real quick? Did you hear
No,
the-
I agree with what you said. It's an interpretation. I think that's what the language
Okay.
imports.
Yeah, we're not going to
Police
break up.
risky behavior.
Yeah.
Someone chooses
Yeah,
to.
we can't go in and do that kind of thing.
I would say this out of my, I cannot imagine somebody not, out of respect to our fellow business owners in this town, I cannot imagine somebody not respecting what we just passed previously. Does it have to be unanimous vote, where if y'all got 6 votes to my
It
one?
has to be unanimous
Be
for it to be
effective
effective
immediately.
immediately, so. But you have to do what you think is right.
Well, I'm saying, because it's a fluid motion, today in this time of this meeting, until there's even been a case within Oktibbeha County, if you called it, I met today with you, but, in the amount of 72 hours, if you look at it from a fluid movement standpoint or a bell curve standpoint, there's been no movement within Oktibbeha County, and that's just what we're governing is Oktibbeha County. I know with a pandemic or a virus, you should look at all areas associated. We've had Webster, and we've had Monroe and Tippa, and we've had areas around, but as far as what we govern, you bring me one instance where any business in town violates what we just passed today, I will vote for this. You can call a special call and I'll be here in 3 hours, but I just can't imagine that people won't use common sense and disperse and not allow, crowds within businesses. I don't think we're gonna have that problem in Starkville at this point, so I'll be
Well,
voting against this.
got it. All right. I still have a motion and a second, and even if it doesn't take,
May I take a brief, could we have 5 minutes? Or
you
2
want a brief,
minutes?
a 5-minute recess, we can do that.
I'm good with this.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we are all back in session. We're taking up the ordinance. There's a motion from Alderman Walker, a second from Alderman Sistrunk on an ordinance that imposes fines associated with the compliance with the resolution. Whoa. All right, we are all back in session. We're taking up the ordinance. And I blew my own Facebook page. I apologize to everyone. And so we're taking up the motion that Alderman Walker and Sistrunk seconded. Alderman Walker motion and Alderman Sistrunk seconded. And we are now in discussion on that matter as to whether or not it would impose fines on any violation of the previously adopted resolution. So, do we have for Alderman Carver?
Chief Ballard, are you recommending that this second motion goes with the first? Is this something that you need as a force? Is it going to enforce any kind of, is it going to add to your enforcement?
I think it would help deliver. I would think that unfortunately not everyone in the community is responsible as what we hope that they would be. And again, the idea behind this is those who choose to be irresponsible, that choose to say money over health, that type of mindset is one that I think it would help us as a police department, Alderman Carver. So to answer your question, yes, sir, I think it would be.
Based on your recommendations, I think I'm going to vote for this. These are perilous times. I want everybody to be able to talk cognizant of numbers nationwide. I've seen it minimum, I don't want to scare anybody, 200 to a million, million and a half. There's going to be cases here. We were just talking, maybe there's been cases here. Just keep us abreast and anything y'all find out.
It'll be on the next agenda. We will have it up for potential discussion on the next agenda, just as a part of our keeping us aware that it's something that we're looking at. And so even if we don't have any discussion associated with it, we'll put it on the next agenda for potential discussion. Okay.
I just like to say, earlier today when I first heard this was coming, I had similar reservations as Alderman Carver as well, but the more I've had an opportunity to digest this and ponder it, and like Alderman Sistrunk said, it's pretty fluid right now and changes hourly. I'd much rather be on the side down the road that we erred on the side of caution than looking back saying we should have done something earlier. So this may be our opportunity to get ahead of it here. We're not too long.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
I know you talked to Pastor Buckner, because Pastor Buckner and I talked, and him and all of the pastors agreed with it, and he said, appreciate you accepting them today, short notice, and said the meeting went real well, but if I talk to Pastor Buckner, that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you all. We'll go ahead and take the vote, and we'll do a roll call vote again. Obviously, Alderman Walker being on the phone, so we will take it as a roll call vote. If you would answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name.
Yay.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Yay.
Alderman Walker. Alderman Walker. Alderman Beatty.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
All right, it is unanimous. That makes this ordinance effective immediately. And you guys, I know this is a tough time, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here and making those hard decisions. So thank you very much. I need a motion to adjourn the special call meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion from Alderman Vaughn, second from Alderman Little. All in favor, please. Oops. Could you answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name?
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Yay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Beatty.
Yay.
Alderman Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
All right, it's unanimous, 7-0. We are in adjournment. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate your attendance.